morning, wherever you're visiting from, or if you're watching the replay, welcome. I'm Nancy Berger, and this is my Ask Nancy monthly live stream where I invite cool people to talk about cool topics. And today I'm really excited to have Julia Geisman here with me, who is a friend and an expert in the whole space of human capital, with human being the operative word there. She really likes to dig in with companies to figure out how to build infrastructure and retain, acquire talent, and all those things that I haven't really talked about a lot in this live stream, and I think is such a critical part of running an effective organization. So I'd like to welcome you, Julia, here.
Thank you.
Ask you to kind of give a little introduction for yourself that's probably a little more specific than what I just said, and tell people what you do, how you do it, and then we'll start our conversation.
Great. So my entire career has been spent on the human side, or the people side of business, because it's therein lies success. So I talk about the organization increasing the increasing the viability or the quality of the work environment, as well as giving people the skills with which to succeed, as well as making sure that, in fact, everybody's included in the conversation, everybody's respected, everybody has an opportunity to contribute, and that simultaneously to that, the whole organization really thrives because the organization is people.
It's a tall order, isn't it, to do all that? And I wonder, it sounds like it kind of intersects between culture and people operations, really.
Sorry, go ahead.
Is that true?
Yes, I actually talk about the people side of the business as a human infrastructure, because for a couple of reasons. Number one, everything is interconnected, and it is the interconnectedness or the intersection of people, culture, and systems. And unfortunately, most organizations address only one segment of that, one aspect of it. They'll develop people, great, but the systems aren't there to support it. Or they'll try to increase the culture, but people are cynical. So it's really an integrated approach that is required if there's going to be any type of sustainable solution or a sustainable positive work environment. And here's the other thing. Having been in this field for more years than I'm willing to admit to, I actually have seen the evolution of how companies see people. When you think back to the industrial age, you probably did not have any way, you were just hired as a body, right? And then, lo and behold, around the 1940s-ish, it became the personnel department. And they were responsible for hiring people and taking care of compliance issues. And then in the 1970s, it shifted to human resources.
Yeah.
Well, so there's a little bit more of humanity built into that title. And now, and you're referring to this too, human capital.
Yeah.
Okay, so I actually think, this is my own opinion, that just talking about it as capital or talking it about as resources really doesn't honor the humanity fully. And to understand.
Yeah. Where I think it breaks down, and I want your opinion on this, is that it breaks down when people think that focusing on that human piece is somehow too soft or not performance focused or not goal driven, because the data is undeniable that when we can get there and integrate all of these pieces together, all boats rise. The organization performs better. The bottom line responds, right? It's not.
Right. So here's the deal. Everybody, the powers to be, the decision makers within organizations, believe that the technical infrastructure is the backbone of everything. So they are always willing to invest in that. And heaven forbid you want to reduce any of the investment in it, because they think that is the thing, because it's very transactional.
Yep.
But when you take a look at the reality of the situation, it's the people who use that infrastructure, that technical infrastructure. Otherwise, without people, the infrastructure doesn't mean anything. It doesn't matter what the investment is.
Correct.
So, and then, people, traditionally people are assets, as opposed to understand there's a very tightly woven interconnection between everything within the organization. So as I mentioned earlier, and you have alluded to this, if you look at only one aspect of the picture, right, you're not really going to get to the root cause. I mean, most people look at symptoms.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh,
well, we have engagement surveys, and actually Gallup, in the most recent Gallup poll about employee engagement, really 70% of the employees are actually
disengaged, not
working. They're 70%, and that's a huge. So you have to say, oh, well, what are you going to do? Well, we'll give them more training. We'll do this and that. Oh, okay. So you prepare people, but your performance management system prevents people from really, number one, leveraging what you just invested in them, because the promotion process or the advancement succession plan may not actually leverage all of the capabilities of people, right, because there are inherent biases and so forth and so on. So there's a situation where an organization has made an investment, but the system doesn't support it.
So let me ask you a question. When you go into an organization to help them, where do you start?
That's a really great question, Nancy, and I'm so glad you asked. Actually, I have developed an assessment over the years that looks at, we call it the PCS index, which is People, Culture, and Systems Index. And it's designed to go beneath the surface, to really get to the root cause, because we look at the totality of all the systems, the intersection of all the systems and the people and the culture, which is, that's the only way you're really going to get to the heart of it. So it looks at the culture, it looks at development and advancement opportunities. We assess development and advancement opportunities, as well as the overall organizational environment, where people feel safe, they feel as if their well-being is acknowledged and honored. There's flexibility to take care of whatever they need to take care of. And rather than talking about individual experiences, we step back and look at the employee perception of the whole.
Which is everything.
Thank you, which is everything, because my experience, and I've seen this, you have one bad experience and you extrapolate it and you apply it to the entire organization. Or maybe you fill out in a pulse survey or an engagement survey and you had a really bad day that day.
Right. So how your assessment, how does it work? How does it grade? What's the measure?
Well, it's all based on statements. And we will only work with organizations where the C-suite, the CEO particularly, engages in this, because traditionally engagement surveys are really just for the underlings, and I say that in air quotes. But you need to know whether or not the organization is aligned. So the CEO and the executive suite really needs to be champions of this process, of really saying, look, we're really committed to developing an environment in which everybody thrives. So this is what we're going to do to embark on it. So they really have to position it. And then
excuse me for interrupting. Does your assessment identify which of the three legs of the stool are in deficit and then starts there? Or is it a different approach? Am I oversimplifying?
You're always oversimplifying, because we look at organizational alignment. across all those dimensions.
Okay.
Okay, so that's why the C-suite is really important to query to get their impression. And it's a rating scale of 1 to 10.
Okay.
Rating people's agreement to the statement.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so we look at organizational alignment, and then we look at differences in perception based upon position and demographics. And then we analyze the differences in perception between the demographic groups.
Yeah.
So there, we're able to find out where the breaks are in the communication and where the differences are as far as advancement abilities, development abilities, satisfaction, and so forth. So that's how we look at it. It's, when you think about the function of HR, you have the technical side, right? Where you have all the compliance issues and so forth and so on. But then HR has been vested with the responsibility of developing a positive perception of the organization to the world.
Yeah.
And there's no way of measuring that perception, which is where we come in. So in addition to being able to understand the health of the organizational alignment and so forth, we're able to give the organization a baseline that they can use to measure or monitor any progress or regression. And they now have the data with which to be able to develop a relevant strategy so that they can invest in those areas that require attention and not necessarily and not bother with the areas in which they're succeeding, because it's not meant to be a punitive a process. It's meant to say, here's where you're succeeding, here's where you need attention.
So you do the assessment, you identify the things, and then do you draw from a toolbox of your own to help them build a strategy to address all this stuff? Do you call in collaborative partners? How does that work? Because I want people to get a clear idea of how you can help and what your process is.
Thank you for asking that again, Nancy. I love this. So once we analyze the data, then what we do is make very specific recommendations based upon the data that apply to the issues that the organization are having. So it now becomes very focused, and those recommendations are based upon a lot of research into best practices.
Mm-hmm.
And it's specific. So many organizations, when they're dealing with all this, the people side of the business, they just a shotgun approach. Yeah, I mean, there are so many times when I've gone into an organization and they say, well, we need leadership development. I said, well, why? Well, because we do. We need to prepare our leaders. I said, but how do you know you have a problem there? Well, because we always do leadership development. This is just normal for us and prepare. Okay, but is there a stated need to do this? What is your metric? What is your KPI for knowing that what your investment is doing is what your investment is producing are the results that you want?
Mm-hmm.
And you can't do that without data.
Right. And sometimes data is, speaking as an executive coach, for me, the first pieces of data are the 360s, which indicate the perception held by the stakeholders of the leader. If leadership development is necessary, let's start there and find out what the perceptions are and if they need to be changed.
And again, you're talking about perception,
right?
And as opposed to experience.
Yeah.
So, and 360s are good because it also moves from the more surface issues and goes down beneath beneath what's lurking beneath the surface.
Yeah.
And those are the things that'll kill.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, do you have a shark close to you? Or do you see the fin?
Yeah.
Better do something about that.
Yes.
So the thing that is astounding though from this, and then you actually, let me backtrack for a minute. Then you ask, what do? We give them the recommendations, and then it's incumbent upon the organization to pick and choose the ones that they want to use.
Mm-hmm.
And my advice to them are two pieces. One is, don't try to eat the elephant at once.
Right.
Take one bite, to one or two things that in fact can be accomplished. You can measure it, so that that you're getting some results, the results that you want, that are observable and measurable.
Yes.
And the other is, you need to do this. Do not rely on a third party. A third party is great for for analyzing the data, because we don't have any confirmation bias. We don't have any stakehold other than, here's the data.
Right.
And so from there, we say, okay, we'll guide you through building the strategy if you need the assistance, but you have to do it. You have to have skin in the game, so to speak. The other thing I always tell them, as far as the recommendation goes, is you need to have a very strong communication strategy around what you're doing.
Right.
The reason for this, and to have it separated out from all the other information that people get bombarded with, this is important. Even if you have nothing to say, you say, we're still working on the strategy and this is the direction we're moving in. The reason for that is, and this is also one of the selection criteria as to companies we'll work for, the CEO has to be involved, the C-suite, and they have to be committed to doing something with it.
So, and the communication strategy is the accountability also.
Yeah, it lets people know that in fact you're doing something. You're being held accountable to the rest of the company. And the reason that we say that is, number one, you can do more damage than good.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people are cynical even about engagement surveys. I mean, come on, they say, oh, we fill them out, but nothing ever happens with it.
Right. That's right.
So why are you investing in it?
Yeah.
I mean, you
check a box,
but a black box.
It's a dangerous box to check. Right.
But that's the thing that's so stunning to me, that there is it doesn't matter how many years back you take a look at the data. Engagement is a problem. Retention is a problem.
Acquisition is a problem.
Team dynamics are a problem. They've been around forever, and you have to ask yourself, well, why? You have, if you had gotten to the root cause of this, you would not be having this recurring problem.
I have a question, and I wonder, because I've suspected this in my own work, that this trajectory is fueled by apathy or detachment from purpose. Like, do you think, in your opinion, are companies challenged to keep their teams engaged to their purpose, engaged to, the vision of what they're trying to do in the world?
Yes, because everybody kind of disconnects into their own fiefdom.
Yep.
And I mean, when you think about the culture of an organization, that's part of it, of really kind of living what the values are. And it's not, in fact, I read an article recently about the whole notion of having a vision and a mission. Is that really going to do anything as much as what are the values? How are you going to live? How are you going to treat each other? Well, what are your goals? So even teams have a culture.
Oh, of course. Yeah. And it's an ecosystem, just like any other.
That's right.
If you take the grasshopper out, all hell breaks loose,
That's right.
So I find this also, and it's interesting when you were talking about data and, people. Data is great. It's necessary, but it's all about people. And I just read yesterday, this whole story about Nike and what happened, and how the CEO missed the mark, so to speak. But it wasn't really that he did anything inherently wrong. He listened to the data, and all these young people crunching the numbers and doing the data and, doing their job well. but he forgot the human piece. And I'm paraphrasing. So, but he forgot to plug into what they were really good at and what people expected of them and what people felt about the brand. So that human piece got him into a lot of trouble because they missed the mark. So,
Well,
right?
yeah. So actually, there are a couple of things that you triggered. One is that, I've been thinking about why is it that the people in control, the CEOs, have less focus on the people side of the business. Okay. Now follow along with this. Okay. Because this is a little bit, some people could say it's a little bit out there. But I was thinking about
You go, Julia, you go.
Thank you. People, you have to look at the evolution of business. When you think about how businesses evolved, it was mostly men who did it, who developed businesses and so forth. Okay, now I'm going to make a gross generalization. These are tendencies. The male psyche, the male behavior tends, operative word, tends to be very transactional. And the feminine behavior tends, operative word, to be very relationship oriented. Deborah Tanner did a whole lot of research.
Sally Helgeson, How Women Rise.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you have to start thinking about what is the legacy of business, and it's transactional. Mm-hmm. And all the research, McKinsey, all the big guys in the industry have done a lot of research, and they have found when there are women in executive and executive roles and CEOs, there is more. The businesses are more profitable. And I will venture a guess to say it's because they have a little bit more attention to the quality of life for their employees. So we're dealing with a legacy of transaction, and organizations are held to quarterly returns.
Well, shareholders, right. So publicly traded companies are beholden to the shareholders. And you said that was a gross generalization, and it was a simplification of what I think is a very complex and interesting topic. And that is the difference in what happens in organizations with those different types of energy, we'll call it, right? Males and females are socialized differently. So this isn't anybody, we're not trash talking either side. We're just saying the fact of the matter is it brings different skill sets to the table, different proclivities to the table. And there's lots of data and literature about it. So this isn't woo-woo stuff. This is real. And it's like biodiversity, right? If you've got a lot of biodiversity, everything works better. So that's kind of what we're talking about in the ecosystem of an organization. And I think it's fascinating.
Yeah. So here's going back to the whole notion of a technical infrastructure versus a human infrastructure. Traditionally, the human side of business has been subject to the economic fluctuations of the world. Of business, that we are an expense, as opposed to an investment. Now, I think that people in this side of the business are kind of culpable for this because we tend to be more soft skills driven, and we haven't been really vigilant about demonstrating a return on the investment. In other words, how does the people side of the business actually contribute to the top or bottom line? Mm-hmm. So therefore, we're categorized as an expense, an administrative expense. Therefore, when companies want to demonstrate profitability, what do? Reduce expenses.
Right.
So therefore, we get underfunded, or we get downsized. That side of the business. And my proposition to organizations saying, you know what, the people the human infrastructure is actually the most critical infrastructure that you have. The most. Because hold on, my batteries. There we go. Because if you don't have good people who are engaged and who are aligned, your systems are nothing.
Well, right, and also we have to consider the splash effect of shifts in perception, culture. I mean, the splash effect, right? It makes a big difference, and then it starts to, move through an organization. So, as you mentioned earlier, that teams have their own sort of culture. People say, "Well, I can't change the whole organization." No, but you can be the leader you want to have, and then you can be the facilitator for that puddle effect there. And then it can start to shift things in an organization, but it just starts in your sphere of influence or whatever it is. So it's very short-sighted to not invest in that. And I think that's what we're talking about.
Well, that's really an interesting point, Nancy, because it really starts with us.
Yeah, it does.
Individually.
Yes.
And in some ways we abdicate responsibility by saying my manager should, or my CEO should, as opposed to, okay, but what are you doing?
What are you doing?
Do you have the courage? Actually, I've been thinking a lot about the art of being a professional human being. I mean, really, when you start thinking about being a professional human being, it's really having that finesse. It's understanding the nuances. It's being able to come from kindness and appreciation.
Yeah.
And all of that. It's an art form, because art is a skill, and it's an understanding of nuances, and it's putting things together.
And it takes engagement. So
courage.
And disengagement is a symptom of something else. So so it is this whole cycle, but it's 11:27. We have 3 more minutes. We could talk about this for 3 more hours
or more.
But I want to make sure that people know how to get in touch with you. So please tell us, because I know you're a little bit in transition. You're creating a new website. You still have an existing website, but I want to make sure people have a clear idea of how to get in touch with you, Julia Geisman, who can help them figure all this out. So what's the best way? So
on LinkedIn, it's linkedin.com and then Julia Geisman, JuliaGeisman, one word. So you can connect with me on LinkedIn. My email is jgeisman@HiWorks, plural, solutions, plural. So there are 2 S's in there, .com. HiWorks, spell it. HiWorks, Okay. That's the new business, the reframing of everything. So I just think that there's a lot that can be done. It doesn't have to be brain surgery. It's just start with embarking on the journey. Right. And you talk about choosing one thing, which I meant to underscore that, because then it's a controlled experiment. When you try to jump the shark, you don't know what's working and what's not working. So I like your approach. It's very, small chunks, chew thoroughly, see what happens, test against the KPIs, and then move on. And see what comes out. Positive and negative. Exactly. So Julia Geisman, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your expertise, your knowledge. This has been Ask Nancy, my monthly live stream. If you missed any of this or you didn't get her website, you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn, Nancy R. Berger. Or through my website, nancyrberger.com. Please join us next month for another great discussion. In the meantime, be well, and we'll see you soon. Thanks again. And thank you, Nancy.